Did Moses write the book of Genesis? Looking at evidence within Genesis itself, the answer appears to be no. If this is true and someone else wrote Genesis, that does not make the book any less valid or inspired, as the text never claims to be written by Moses or any other author for that matter. It is tradition that ascribes the book to Moses. I am bringing this up so that as children of truth we do not simply repeat traditions without fully investigating for ourselves. The text has a story to tell in itself if we are humble enough to listen. The first witness, Dan. Genesis 10:19, and the border of the Canaanites was from Zidon, as thou comest to Gerar unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. Starting in Zidon and tracing the border south to Gaza, east to Sodom et al., then north to Lasha. I believe this is the place which eventually became the city of Dan, also known as Laish in Judges 18 and Lashem in Joshua 19. The renaming took place after Moses' death, so we would expect to see the original place name as we do in Genesis 10. Nothing wrong there. However, in Genesis 14, we see it referred to as Dan. Genesis 14:14, and when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Dan was 3 generations from being born, so the city would not have carried his name in the time of Abram. As seen above, the city did not acquire the name until Israel was in the land, dividing up the country between the tribes. Now, even if Lasha in Genesis 10 is a different place, we should not see any city named after a person who will not be born for hundreds of years. Moses would not have known this naturally while he was alive. Certainly, Yah could have given him revelation. Perhaps Moses wrote Lasha in Genesis 14, and a scribe at a later date changed it to reflect the place which he knew as Dan. Or perhaps Genesis was written after the city became Dan. Witness 2, past tense. Genesis 12:6, and Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. Genesis 13:7, and there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelt then in the land. This gives the impression that when the writer penned those verses, the Canaanite and Perizzite were no longer in the land. It is past tense, referring to something that is seemingly not the case when being written and or read, intending to alert the reader to something they would not inherently know. Much like Genesis 6:4, there were giants in the earth in those days. Giants dwelt then in the land. Again, it was not until the time of Joshua and Judges, and even later, that the Canaanite and Perizzite were not in the land in force. Witness 3, the Edomite kings. Genesis 36:31, and these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom, before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. This implies the author knows there will be kings over Israel, and that the following list of Edomites predates the time of the Israelite kings beginning. We see the same phrase used in 1 Chronicles 1:43. Now these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the children of Israel. It is not at all troubling in Chronicles, being written well after the time, but seems out of place in Genesis well before the full list of Edomite kings were born. These are the verses I have found which raise questions as to authorship. Once again, it is tradition that places Moses as the writer, and Yeshua has much to say about tradition.